What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Bootleg Football Podcast. Happy to have you all here with us today, recapping everything that happened in Week 9. We had really a lot to talk about, several massive games, some of the weirdest quarterback performances that I've seen in a while in terms of great quarterbacks playing terribly and some not so great quarterbacks playing great. It was a wild Week 9, so we got a lot to get to today. Before we start recapping our games, though, EJ, my wonderful co-host, buddy, how are you doing, and what are you drinking tonight?
I'm good. I'm tired. I'm fired up. We got plenty to talk about, more than plenty to talk about, as is typical, but all you folks out there that want to consume this podcast on a weekly basis, you know what you're in for. It's a long ride, and we couldn't be happier to have you along for it. I am drinking a local beer from Fremont Brewing right up the road in Seattle, and it is one of the best named beers out there. It is the Sky Kraken Hazy Pale Ale, which is great with the Kraken coming to Seattle as the new NHL team. The beer actually started before that, but it's got some great art on it with this giant squid taking down a zeppelin in the clouds. So that's my beer, Hazy Pale Ale, good stuff. I've had it before. And for my shot of the week, I decided to go with the Jameson Limited Edition Cold Brew for a little bit of a speedball action. So it's Jameson mixed with coffee. Yeah, it's tasty. It's great in coffee. It's great with any kind of coffee nudge type drink. I've just got it in a glass with a little bit of ice, as is typical for me, but hoping it'll give me a little bit of a boost here because we're recording fairly late, and it feels like a long week already, but it kind of can't be because it's only Tuesday night.
Yeah, well, this week has been the longest year of our lives, I guess you could say.
That's true. That's totally true.
I'm rocking my Glenfiddich 15-year tonight. I haven't had it on the show in a while, but I saw it up in my cabinet, and I was like, you know what? I want something really smooth tonight. And if you really want a smooth, I don't even want to say it's like a beginner scotch, because there's no such thing as a beginner scotch, I guess you could say. But if you want something that I think anybody can kind of approach and enjoy, Glenfiddich 15 is one of the smoothest scotches out there. I mean, buttery smooth, not buttery flavor, but just in terms of, like, it is the least offensive scotch I think I've ever drank. It's only 40% alcohol, which I know by beer standards is a lot, but by scotch standards, it's on the lower end. I mean, just beautiful kind of honey, fruit notes, goes down super easy. There's a little bit of spice, but like not really at all. Great kind of fall sipper. And yeah, if you're new to scotch, or if you know a scotch lover and you're trying to think of like a good Christmas gift to get him, Glenfiddich 15 is best out there.
Man, but Christmas list. We got to come up with like the bootleg Christmas list.
Like the Christmas list for like football fans.
We could do alcohol, we could do football, we could do other crap we think is cool. I didn't even think about that. Now I'm excited. I'm trying to look for things to get excited about for the holidays this year, because obviously it's going to be a little bit different, but maybe we'll do that on a future podcast. A little bootleg football podcast Christmas list action.
And we could crowdsource this too. If you guys know of a really good beer,
absolutely.
A really good whiskey, a tequila, a hot sauce, something for a football fan, if you guys know of anything that you're going to be getting for that special someone in your life that loves booze and or food and or football and or all of them, feel free to leave in the comments. Let us know what you guys are doing, because I certainly need ideas. But all that being said, I'm just saying, I got a lot of people to shop for. But
it's true. So we're going to skip the point after this week. Speaking of a lot of stuff to do, we put out a podcast pretty late last week and covered most of the stuff. And at this point of the season, look, we are midway through. Games are all starting to run together. I can't remember whether Thursday's game is this week's or next week's. Was that the Sunday game or the Monday game? So we're just going to skip the point after and go right to the important stuff. Bootleg Shot of the Week winner from last week. You guys all voted. And it's Emmanuel Ogbah smacking Jared Goff into oblivion, which was certainly a worthy shot on the quarterback. And Dolphins defense coming up big again this week, so it doesn't look like an isolated incident for them, but that was the bootleg shot of the week winner from last week. Emmanuel Ogbah getting after the Rams quarterback, Jared Goff, and just blowing him up big time. So I'm actually going to sip my shot tonight because I'd like to make it through the podcast in one piece.
Well, I got Breckenridge bourbon, and I'm going to shoot this sucker because I love Breckenridge. So, that being said,
Therefore,
Agba, cheers.
oh, man.
God, that's good.
So smooth.
I don't know if you guys have ever had Breckenridge bourbon. If you're a Colorado resident, it's probably easier to get. I don't really know what their distribution is like, but if you're a native of Colorado or kind of somewhere around where Breckenridge bourbon is distributed and you've never had it before, go get it. It is fantastic stuff. But anyway, first big game we're going to recap this week is Panthers-Chiefs, which was closer than I think a lot of people expected. The line was 10 points in favor of Kansas City. And I remember I put my picks article out Sunday morning, basically saying, like, no, trust me, this is not going to be a 10-point game. The Panthers were getting some guys back from injury, most notably Yetur Gross-Matos and obviously Christian McCaffrey, who got hurt again this week, but still he was coming back. Derek Brown, their nose tackle, has gotten every single week he's gotten a lot better. And believe it or not, Derek Brown, again, big nose tackle, is second among all rookies in pressures right now. And Yetur Gross-Matos, before his ankle injury, which I think was like week 4, if I remember correctly, both he and Brian Burns were like top 5 in edge rushers in the entire league in terms of pressure rate. So like this defensive line is young. They are phenomenal at rushing the passer, and they were getting their best offensive player back. So I went into this game expecting it to be close, and boy, it was a good one.
This is a great game, and the Panthers have gotten better. We thought they might be good. I thought that Teddy Bridgewater was one of the best free agent quarterback prizes of the offseason. I was very upset he didn't land in Chicago. That, of course, looks foreboding right now with where Chicago is. But, yeah, give a first-year coach credit. Comes in, transforms Carolina, Teddy playing extremely well, and they're getting contributions all over the place. We talked about the defense. Their entire draft was defense. A lot of those guys are contributing. They're just putting together a lot more of a push than many people probably gave them credit for. While I didn't think they were going to beat KC, the fact that the Panthers pushed the Chiefs to within a last-second field goal of winning it is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, this is a roster that essentially got blown up and retooled without a true offseason because of COVID. And they're out here, pushing the defending Super Bowl champs, one of the few elite teams in the league, to the brink. And for a while, I definitely thought they were going to win that game. It kind of seems like the Panthers, 4 weeks in a row now, they're just like the Chargers. They are losing close games, but only barely. And this is almost kind of reminiscent of like the Dolphins in the second half of last season, after they kind of got out of that spell of being blown out, and then you started seeing them get progressively more competitive, and then they started winning some games. And then you're like, okay, maybe there's something here. The Panthers kind of skipped the getting blown out portion of the rebuild, and they've just been competitive all year. And I kind of feel like next year, again, you get presumably a true offseason. I think pretty much all of their talent, contract-wise, is going to be coming back. And they're only 3-6 right now, so they're probably going to have a decently high draft pick too to get even more talent. Like the Panthers are going to be really, really good sooner rather than later. And in regards to this one game, I also want to say I hope they keep Joe Brady, because it seems like he is the only person that Carolina's ever had that can actually use Curtis Samuel properly. And I would like to personally thank him for that, because I loved Curtis Samuel coming out of the draft, and he never quite hit the way I thought he would. And then all of a sudden Joe Brady comes along, he's giving him carries, he's giving him a whole bunch of yak opportunities, and Samuel is just lighting it up right now. So if I was Carolina, I would do everything I could to keep Joe Brady in my building for at least one more year, because he and all of these weapons together, and Teddy and Christian, and man, this offense is really fun.
Yeah, I saw my first Joe Brady as coach of the Chicago Bears next year post yesterday.
I wouldn't doubt it.
No, he is one of the top play callers, if not the top play caller right now in terms of effectiveness. Right up there with Andy Reid. One of my favorite moments in this game was the opening touchdown from Teddy to CMC, because there aren't a ton of fans in the stadium, and you can hear the players, and you could hear Teddy yelling, "Welcome back!" Like, he was so happy that Christian McCaffrey was back, and you get to see and hear the sort of joy of these guys going out there and playing a game for a living. So it was a great moment. One of the not so great moments is we sung Dave Tube's praises. Specifically, I sung Dave Tube's praises, the special teams coordinator for Kansas City last week. So of course, what happens this week? Gets drilled by a fake punt, long conversion. Of course he did, right after we said he's always prepared. He's totally dialed. Of course. Is this a common curse, or is this something I brought on him? I can't quite decide.
I mean, how often does a special teams unit run 4 verts out of a punt formation? I mean that's...
I'm sorry. It just makes me giggle when I think about it. So I'm like, maybe more often if I'm in charge.
That's Kansas City's favorite play too, and the Panthers ran it on special teams just because they could.
Yeah,
it was great.
It wasn't lost on me is that they were going, oh yeah, we can do it. We can do it out of special teams. We don't even have to do it out of our base O. So super fun game in a lot of ways, but then Samuel comes back, jets around the edge for TD. Like I said, a couple notes about Mahomes. We need to keep talking about him because he's a tremendous player, but you almost get tired of talking about him because he's a tremendous player. Newsflash, if you give Patrick Mahomes all day, he'll kill you. I don't know if you knew that, but there were a couple times where this supposedly devastating pass rush did not get to him, and oh boy, that is not a setup for success. New wrinkle this week, pre-snap QB motion. The rest of the league just has to hate Andy Reid. Yes, Patrick Mahomes went in motion before the snap, came back, kind of caught it on the run, looped around, ended up throwing a touchdown off that play. And there was another play they scored on that Mahomes is one of the things we don't talk about because we talk about his elusiveness, the fact that he's a tremendous athlete. Obviously, his arm talent is at the top of the list all the time. He's really good at ball fakes. And there was a play in this game where the cameraman was like, what? No, wait, what? And, then Mahomes pulls it back up, throws it for a little screen pass touchdown. So it's really cool to see a young guy working on not only the big and flashy things, but also the little things that make quarterbacks really good and hard to defend. And Mahomes just seems committed and has seemed very committed since his entry into the league at doing all the things, not just the things he was good at, not just the things he likes, but all the things to make his game diverse and even harder to defend. And that's just bad news for the rest of the league.
The mark of a quarterback that works really hard is how committed they are to mastering ball handling. And I'm not talking just in terms of faking it, but I'm talking in terms of hitting their landmarks, to hand off properly for a running back so they can hit their track in the run game, in terms of how they open their hips, again, to set up the perfect fake. Like sometimes quarterbacks will step differently based on the kind of front they see because they know they might have to get a little bit wide or cut a little bit short in order to put their body in the right eye line to keep the linebackers guessing. And Mahomes does that. Like he is so good. Like part of the reason why their play action pass game and like their RPO game and stuff is so good is he's very good at hiding the ball from linebackers to the last possible second, and it makes their windows just wide open over the middle. Kelsey, like when he'll catch these wide open passes, and you're wondering, it's like, why are the linebackers biting up so much? It's like, well, because they can't see the ball. Lamar does it very well too over in Baltimore. Like if you can't see the ball, you're just guessing. And when you're guessing against an offense like Kansas City or Baltimore or any of these other guys, you're just going to lose. Like that's just how it is.
Yep. So Casey, lots of fakes, more than I think any team in the league. And we saw the good and the bad. It was sort of the tale of two cities bit, right? Best of times and worst of times. Casey ran a 2 fake screen that got absolutely blown up, just smashed. Ended up being about an 8-yard loss. And then within the same drive later on, they ran a 2 fake leak concept on the goal line, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire scored on it. So it's just something you're going to have to live with as a KC fan. Not that it's very difficult to live with because they're winning like crazy right now, but they're going to live and die by the sort of Lakers showtime, razzle-dazzle, tip pass, underhand, 2 fake game. They're having a ton of fun. They're playing loose. And they're having great success with it, but occasionally it bites them, and it did earlier in that drive. But of course, they scored on a somewhat similar play later on in the same drive. So they're not going to stop. This is like a shooter, right? A designated shooter in basketball that is just going to keep putting it up, right? He knows that if he keeps putting them up, the points are going to come. And Kansas City knows if they keep running fakes, tip passes, pre-snap quarterback motion of all things, the points are going to come. They've got the talent. Everybody's playing together. So you're going to see the good and the bad, and you're going to see a whole lot more good than bad with KC right now. So the other thing you might just want to cover Tyreek Hill. Just a thought. Panthers bust coverage on him. So. You know, guy that scores, I don't know, every once in a while. Anyways, they didn't. They got burned on that. That didn't help. You talked about Curtis Samuel at the top as a runner and as just as a weapon. I would say he's up for a catch of the year candidate. Top of the fourth quarter, Teddy threw in sort of back inside when he was running a slant to sort of the left edge. He threw it back to the right of him, and Samuel somehow kind of stops and jacks his body back towards the middle of the field, catches it diving with two hands midair. Just an amazing feat of sort of body control, awareness, hands, just everything coming together. Tremendous catch.
It wasn't a great ball, and Samuel's not very big, but he's so explosive. I mean, he jumped, it must have been 3 or 4 yards back to get that thing. I mean, he full extension. Yep. And you know, again, it was a 28-yarder, which accounted for probably about 30% of his production on the day just in that one catch, and he laid out for it completely. So, again, credit to him just kind of making his quarterback right, and especially on a crucial drive in the fourth quarter. They were down by, if I remember correctly, it was like 8 or 9 points at that time, and that kind of jump-started the drive to help them pull within 2 or 3 points, which I think was the final score of the game. So, again,
and that drive was pure highlights, man, because Samuel had the first catch, which we just talked about. Then Teddy sells out Superman style for the first. He gets close to the marker and he says, "Bag it. I don't really care. I'm not going to slide. I'm literally just going to huck my meat over the marker and take the impact." Gets the first down, and you're just, you know, again, as a player, as a coach, you worry about the health as a coach, but as a player, that guy just sold out for us, right? Curtis Samuel sells out for his diving catch. Teddy sells out for the first down. CMC comes up with a miracle catch in that drive as well, and then Bridgewater keeps. Yep, and Bridgewater keeps for the TD. Like, that is an amazing drive with contributions from all their playmakers against one of, if not the best teams in the league at a time they really needed it. Those are the kind of things that even though Carolina loses the game, you can build on. Those are guys pulling hard for each other, making big plays when the game's on the line. Those are not things that you should overlook as, oh, well, KC won the game, it doesn't matter. It does matter, and Carolina's building a foundation. They add a few more pieces on offense, and that, you know, young defense starts to mature. Look out.
Plus, look at the rest of the division, just kind of looking at it from a macro perspective, because I know on this podcast we love to talk about roster building and everything like that. Look at the rest of the division. You got Tom Brady, who's old, last couple of years of his career, probably. Drew Brees, probably in the last year of his career. Matt Ryan, depending on how high the Falcons are picking, they might be moving on from him as well. The financials are going to be kind of interesting to work out, but again, you only get so many top 5 picks. This is a very good quarterback class. It wouldn't surprise me if they're starting to look at the future after this year, especially if they're getting a new head coach. So the Panthers are kind of primed here to take over the division from 3 other teams that all have quarterbacks that might not be there in the next 2 years. You've got Teddy, who's still in his prime, and he's a good quarterback, and I truly believe they'll probably keep him if he keeps playing like this, which he's played very, very well this year. Again, you're going to have a high pick. You have a lot of young talent. Matt Rule is a good young coach. Like there's so much good to look forward to on offense, defense, and the coaching staff here, that even if they end up going, I don't know, 5-11, 6-10 this year, I almost don't care, because as you said, the foundation and the landscape of the division going forward, like I think Carolina's going to run this division in 1 or 2 years and then keep running it for a very long time.
Yeah, it depends on their quarterback stability. I would not go away from Teddy. He's got a hot hand. He's playing, and guys are playing for him right now.
Yes.
He's certainly not a liability, and you could do a lot worse. And obviously, quarterback gambling is a very expensive proposition. You mentioned the Falcons. Interesting position because of Ryan's contract, and people say, oh, they couldn't possibly take a quarterback high. There's a very strong possibility they take a quarterback high, and Matt Ryan becomes the ultimate one-year bridge because his number to get rid of after this year is a lot better.
Yeah.
If they try and get rid of him next year, it's prohibitive. It's a very big number. So Matt Ryan could be the ultimate one-year bridge. And remember, Mahomes did not play his freshman year in the NFL, right? He sat behind Alex Smith. He learned. Matt Nagy was his quarterback coach, and he came out ready to go in year 2. That could be a very similar situation for whoever ends up in Atlanta if they do indeed decide to pick a quarterback high in this draft. Because you're right, if you're going to get a quarterback prospect, typically top half of the first is where you're going to get the guys that have the best chance. And still, that's only about half and half, but it's better than digging around down in the 4th or 5th and hoping. But we'll talk about one of those guys later on today.
By the way, just slight note, who's a really good quarterback prospect who happens to be from Kennesaw, Georgia, an Atlanta suburb? Justin Fields. Just saying.
Georgia native. Yep.
Just saying. Could happen.
There's a lot of things could happen. It's going to be a fascinating offseason. We'll have plenty of time to get to that. This game went back and forth. Chiefs marched right down, scored, throwing to Hill. Color me shocked. Never happens. I don't know. I just fell off my chair. Tyreek Hill, touchdown. What? He never gets those. But then CMC scores again to pull within 1 score. So, again, the Panthers take a shot right in the mouth and march right back down the field and go, nope, we're not rolling over. Towards the end of the game, big sack by Brian Burns on Mahomes. You don't see those very often, but Burns is super quick. Good move to get around. And, bottom line, Panthers pushed the Chiefs to within a last-second field goal of winning it. And that's, they didn't make the field goal, but the fact that they were even in that position against that team this year says a ton about where Carolina's at and where they're going.
Yeah, I'm super excited to see what this team looks like in 1 or 2 years. I'd be willing to bet they lose Joe Brady probably after this year, to be honest.
It'll be tough to hold on to him.
It's going to be really tough to hold on to him, especially because, again, the Panthers are likely not going to go to the playoffs at this point. You already got 6 losses. I highly doubt in a very competitive NFC that they rip off 7 straight wins to go 10-6 and sneak in. Like, it's possible, but I doubt it. Which means Joe Brady's going to be able to interview before a lot of these other coordinators, like, say, Eric Bieniemy, who may or may not be going back to the Super Bowl this year. Like, Joe Brady's going to be one of the first guys to get interviews, which means he's probably going to be one of the first guys to get hired. And we know that everybody loves hiring young, up-and-coming offensive coaches and kind of rolling the dice on them. So I doubt they keep Joe Brady beyond this year just because he's going to be hot commodity. Maybe for Chicago? Maybe
we'll see. Depends on the situation. I wouldn't be opposed to it because it actually looks like Joe Brady can run an offense, and Chicago. How am I going to say this gently? I'm not. They can't. So that seems to be a major difference.
By the way, a word to our listeners: we're not talking about the Bears game. We can't do it.
Yeah,
we just can't. We're not doing it.
If you want to hear about the Bears game, tune into Bears Over Beers. I have to talk about it there, but we're even going to limit it there. We're really going to talk about what's next because it's the same old thing. If you've watched a Bears loss in the last, say, 5 years, it's the same thing. So we're not going to till that field again right here. We're going to go to Raiders Chargers, and I'm going to start off with a fun fact that I just love. The Chargers dark blue unis are elite. They are so good. Like, the powder blues are amazing. The whites look really good. The dark blues are stunning. I grew up watching racing in my household, and one of my all-time favorite automotive liveries is the Penske Sunoco like Trans Am series cars, 68, 69 Camaros, dark blue, the big yellow Sunoco logo on the hood. Like, it's the same color scheme, and it looks awesome on the field. Like, I tuned into that game, and I was like, oh, they look even better than they did during the reveal. Those things are amazing. If they wore them every other week, I would not complain one lick. The Chargers pretty much winning the uniform battle right now. Those things are so sick.
It's every single Chargers uniform, whether it's the darks, it's the whites, it's the powder blues. Literally every single Chargers uniform is incredible. And any uniform discussion about who is the best in the league, like, it's not a discussion to me. Like, it's the Chargers. Like, they just blow everybody out of the water. They're so freaking good. But, it's almost been like that way for a while, because I feel like the Chargers haven't had a bad uniform, I don't know, my entire life. Like,
yeah, not terrible. And that's the thing. When they said they were going to redo them, everybody was like, well, hey, man, they're pretty good. What are you going to do? And they knocked it out of the park. It's amazing. It's really rare for that to happen. Usually uniform designers, not to go too far down a rabbit hole, but they try and do too much. And if anybody puts out another fade, they're going to get smacked.
Or the freaking alarm clock numbers from Tampa for a few years. I'm like, guys, come on.
I mean, there's a lot of missteps, and the Chargers uniform designers took none of them, and they got all the good stuff in the same bucket. It's crazy, but those dark blues are so, so good. On to the game, which was also pretty good. Devontae Booker goes around the edge with speed for the first TD. Yes, not Josh Jacobs, but Booker. And looked fast doing it. He's definitely played well in backup action this year, but opens the scoring looking quicker than I remember him. He's always had some good power.
Yeah.
His vision's been pretty solid, but man, did he blaze around the edge on that one. I thought, whoa. And you wonder if a guy sort of lost weight or went to speed training in the offseason or whatever it was, but it definitely more fleet of foot than I remember Booker being in his time when he jumped into the league. The guy that got burned is one of our favorites. Jerry Tillery needed to set the edge on that play a little bit harder. They pulled two guys out in front of him, but he did not. He set a kind of soft edge, and it basically let all those guys spill, and they're the ones that picked up the second and even third level. And, Booker ends up with a big TD early to break open the scoring.
Yeah, that was a little bit frustrating to me because they kept putting Tillery, because Bosa was out, they kept putting Tillery at like a 6 technique, because they wanted him to be able to still be able to peek inside, because they expected a lot of inside runs. They expected power. They expected inside zone. They expected duo. They wanted Tillery to be able to either play 6 technique on a tight end and peek inside, or play like a true 5 technique on a tackle and peek inside, when they just kept hitting those pin and pulls to the edge over and over again. And at some point, they hit on like 5 or 6 times. At some point, I was like, guys, just put him outside. Put him at a 7. Put him at a 9. Just stop letting stuff outside. And if they run inside, whatever. Let the linebackers deal with it. But
yeah,
they were giving up
at that point.
Yeah, they were giving up like 15 yards carry.
Yeah, he started going across the face on his guy, and on that particular run, because he was the closest thing to an edge, there was no linebacker behind him that was wider. That was it. Like, all of a sudden, you're looking at 3 blockers out on the edge, and they're just looking at cornerbacks and safeties going,
Yeah,
so,
it's just, I don't know.
No,
I don't know why
it was
they
a
did
bummer.
that.
And it's scheme and setup. Sometimes the offensive call, just outmatches the defensive call. But like you said, once it happens 2 or 3 times, you got to adjust.
Yeah, they got, at some point in the third quarter, they were averaging like 10 yards a carry total and like 15 yards a carry just on that one run. Like, it was nuts. It's like, you guys got to make an adjustment at some point, because they hit on it over and over and over again. Yeah. Every time they got that front, Derek checked to it. Like, it's like they had a word for it. I can't remember what it was, but he would literally just see anytime they didn't have a hard edge pre-snap, he would just look around and be like, okay, I guess we're going to do it again. And it kept working. Free money.
Yeah. And this was one that caught both of us. Kalen Ballage ends up in the Los Angeles Chargers and scores in his debut. And they were like, Ballage for the touchdown. I was like, wait a minute, there's only one of those. When did he end up on the Chargers? But, nice touchdown on his first run. Booker comes back and gets the edge again. I think we talked about that already. But then they do the nice counterpunch. Jacobs comes back with a nice run for the score that was more of an inside run. And it's not really, people always love to say thunder and lightning when you've got two running backs. It's not really like that with Jacobs and Booker. They both have a similar style. Look, I think Jacobs has more talent than Booker, but when you're alternating those guys, it's just two strong punchers punching. And, you go outside and you go inside with two runners that look the same. You're just wearing people down, and the Raiders looked, I would say, in command early.
Yeah, it's such an efficient offense. And I remember reading that the Raiders right now are number 2 in the league in terms of having drives end up in points, like the percentage of drives that they have that start regardless of field position where they get something out of them. It's at 50%. 50% of their drives they end up scoring on. And even though their red zone scoring attempts is like kind of middle of the pack, it's at like about 3.5, which is somewhere around 12 or 13. So again, higher in the middle of the pack. So they don't always get into the red zone, but they at least get into that kind of like 25 to 35 yard area where you can get Carlson in for a field goal range. So again, their yards per drive is just astronomical because they're so efficient with the run game. They're so good off play action. Derek Carr has been fantastic at the line of scrimmage this year in terms of seeing stuff pre-snap and getting his offense into the right play. Like, truly, the Raiders are, I think, one of my favorite teams to watch right now because they're just good at football. Like, they're good at the little things of football, at least on the offensive side. The defense could still use work. But how many other teams could have so many different offensive line combinations, which they've had this year because of injuries and COVID and all that kind of stuff? They've had so many problems on the offensive line, and they haven't missed a beat because Derek Carr has been good. Even with games without Ruggs, even with games without Edwards, they've had injury issues at receiver. Like, so many excuses could have been made for this team in terms of losing talent. But again, they're still one of the most efficient offenses in the entire league. All the credit in the world to Gruden, all the credit in the world to Carr, who had a fantastic game. He was another one of those quarterbacks that went up and did a hurdle himself. It seems like that was the thing for quarterbacks this week. Man, I love watching these Raiders. They are so scrappy.
Yeah, and they're pushing the ball down the field in a good way. A lot of times you see people that are pushing the ball down the field that aren't named Mahomes, and Justin Herbert on the other side of this, we're not going to not talk about him. Don't worry about that, Chargers fans. He's been a revelation pushing the ball down the field because he really wasn't doing it that way in his last year in college, and he's looked so good in doing it in his opening campaign in the NFL. But Carr, we talked about as a guy that was really sort of more efficient, quick game. We talked about him in the offseason. And he has been launching, like you said, with authority. He knows where he's going with the ball. He's getting it off at the right time. He's not late down the field. He's getting leads for his receivers. Like you said, a ton of fun to watch. Quite frankly, I'm just jealous because I'm a Bears fan and I don't really get to watch offense. And to see, again, a team that is clicking on all cylinders and pushing the ball down the field and using their weapons and has a very competent run game, I just kind of drool when I watch the Raiders offense because I have that what-if moment of, if you matched anything that looked like that with the Bears defense, they'd probably be undefeated right now. The Chargers offense is fun to watch as well. And we talked about this in our preview episode of the AFC West. We were like, it's going to be a lot of fun. And we didn't think the Chargers were going to be anywhere near this much fun this year. We knew the Chiefs were. We knew the Raiders were built to keep up with them in a track meet. And having, Justin Herbert vault himself into the, sort of legion of excellent deep ball throwers this early in his career has just made the rest of it. This is just a ton of fun. Every interdivisional game, is so much fun because they're just going at it.
Yeah, no, I'm very surprised with some of these quarterbacks this year. Carr, like we had seen, I'll kind of talk about both of them. We'd seen Carr play really well in 2016. It seemed like we were waiting forever for him to get back to that level, and now he obviously has got back to that level. And I've also been surprised, but pleasantly surprised with Herbert, with just how phenomenal he's been so far. He's the third highest passer rating in the league under pressure. Like, if you told me in August that Derek Carr would be playing the best football of his career and Justin Herbert would be playing like a rookie of the year, like not just contender, but like front runner, like by a lot, I would have thought you were crazy. But here we are. Carr's been magnificent. Herbert has been a revelation. So good under pressure. He's been unflappable, extremely accurate deep, making good decisions. Like there have been some bad, obviously, decisions here and there. Like there's some stuff where I kind of attribute it to almost like young Mahomes when he was in his first like 5 or 6 games where he was making some throws and kind of figuring out what he could and couldn't get away with. Like there's been some of those, but on the whole, Herbert's been just phenomenal. And again, all the credit in the world to him for doing the work, and obviously the coaching staff for getting him ready to play without a true offseason. And he didn't even get starters reps in camp. This has been one of the most remarkable transformations from a college prospect that I did not think was very good. Like he had talent, obviously, but in terms of like the actual playing the position, I did not think he was very good just based on what we saw at Oregon. But then the transformation to what we're seeing now with the Chargers, like I can't really remember many cases that are like this of somebody kind of going into the cocoon and emerging as a butterfly this quickly. Like he has been so good, and the Chargers clearly have a franchise quarterback. And in this division where you're going up against the Raiders that are a really good offense, the Chiefs obviously with Mahomes, and then Drew Lock, I think we've seen some good things, but I think the jury's still out until he gets all of his talent back around him. There's been a lot of injuries in Denver, so I don't think we can fully judge him at the moment. But man, this division has all these young quarterbacks that are just so damn good. And I legitimately don't know what the AFC West is going to look like for the next 5 or 6 years, because every single team, I think, can make a case for being a playoff team, other than Denver. But when Denver gets healthy, I think they can make a case for being a playoff team. Like, this is just a crazy division.
It's so much fun, and it's just good for football. That's what it is. The fact that you have 4 competitive teams, 4 young quarterbacks, and I'll call Carr a young quarterback. He's the most mature of the bunch, but still not anywhere near past his prime. And Locke has shown moxie, right? Locke's shown the ability to get that ball, and he did again this week. He made some really big throws under pressure. He's less consistent than the other guys, but it's going to be a ton of fun to watch, a treat for football fans for a long time, and it bodes really, really well for football. There was a time when we didn't have a lot of good young quarterback prospects throughout the league, and that's bad for football. And this is the opposite of that. This is an embarrassment of riches at the position in one division, just going at it every week. They all could, like you said, stake the claim as possibly the best team in the division on a given week. Look, right now everybody's chasing the Chiefs, but you can see a young Denver team growing together. Locke starting to clean up the consistency. The Chargers,
the Raiders beat them. The Raiders
Absolutely.
Just beat them. The Chargers took him to the wire in Herbert's first start. Like, the Chiefs are the best team in the division, but not by that much. Like,
no,
these other teams
it's
are
definitely
nipping on
not
their heels.
Doormats, who are going to have to rise up. This is not the AFC East, which has been one way for a very long time, looking up at the top of the mountain. This is going to be a jumbled division and a fun one, like you said, for a long time, because they're all set up with good young talent. And they're just going to fight it out for a while, and we're just going to get to watch, and that's awesome.
By the way, if anybody wants, just kind of speaking of crazy quarterbacks in this division, if anybody wants to see the best throw of the week, go look up Carr's 53-yarder to Renfro on the run. Just sick. I mean, completely ridiculous throw. Like, it's a very Mahomes type of throw. It's a Herbert type of throw. I almost didn't even realize that Carr had that kind of arm, but I mean, he laid it out there perfectly for Renfro while on the run. I think he got out of a sack earlier in the play too. Just a crazy play, and he's just having that kind of year, man. 2016 Carr is back. I'm not saying he's he's an MVP candidate, because I think Russ and Mahomes are kind of have that discussion well in hand, but man, he's playing so well that, again, right now I have the Raiders slotted in at least for a wild card, because he's honestly playing that well. So
they're going to be a tough out. But my favorite thing about that 53-yard gain to Renfro is that it was total schoolyard. So he gets out of pressure. He rolls around to his right. He gets his eyes back upfield. He looks downfield. He sees what he's got. He sees he's got 2 receivers on the right-hand side. And he just, go on, go deep, right? He just flashes his hand, turn around, run. I'll get it to you, right? He's got about 10 yards until he hits the sideline. He just rips it on the run. And, right over the defensive back into Renfro 53. But he just literally sent him deep. As soon as he got out of pressure, got his eyes up, he was like, go, go, go. And then he just throws it on a line down the sideline. Pure schoolyard stuff. Tons of fun to see that actually work in the NFL.
Now, we've been gassing up the Chargers for this whole segment, but we do have to talk about them chargering again because it kind of seems like they can't stop doing it. For as good a team as this is, and again, I know they keep losing games, but this is still a team that gets 16-point leads on everybody every single week, like other than this week. But like they are consistently in position to win games. Like this is a very good team. And then they keep doing stuff like muffing punts, so the Raiders get a field goal out of it. Huge swing in momentum. They're set up inside of 2 minutes. They're driving down the field. They almost get the fade to a backup tight end. Parham, I think is how you pronounce his name.
Donald Parham.
And the DB was 31. I can't remember his name. Just kind of raked his arm through and knocked it out the last second. The TD was on the board, and then they reviewed it and took it off. There was all the elation. The Chargers finally didn't charger it up again, and then they did. Like, this team is so good at snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. And honestly, they should be in the driver's seat for a playoff spot and not the Raiders right now, but they just can't stop screwing up.
Yeah, this comes back to a term that you hear a lot of football folks, players, coaches, even execs and commentators talk about, which is learning how to win. And learning how to win means learning how to tighten things up in the last couple of minutes and not making those errors, right? You still have to make the big plays. Look, the Chargers are making the big plays, but you can't make the bad ones. You can't muff that punt. You just can't, right? It's not the way. Now, Parham has to catch that, but one of the things we said last week, and it hasn't changed to this week, is Herbert's doing all this. Yes, he's got Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Like, they are great receivers. He's got Hunter Henry when he's in there at the tight end spot, but a lot of these plays he's making to backup players, right? Players that are not top tier. It is not the kind of depth that we see, in Atlanta's receiving core or Dallas's receiving core, right? He's doing it with less. So part of this is the old Jimmy's on Joe's thing, right? Your guys have got to be better than their guys. And his guys aren't right now, especially down the roster, but he's still creating plays with them in there, which bodes extremely well for the future. And what they've got to do is figure out a way to eliminate those killer mistakes at the right time. You can make that kind of mistake in the second quarter. It's usually not going to cost you the game. You cannot make that kind of mistake inside the last 3 or 4 minutes and expect to win a tight game against a talented team like the Raiders. So learning how to win isn't some, magical woo-woo philosophy that the team needs to bring in. It is tighten up and don't, choke it away is what everybody talks about. They've been so close, but you've got to, it becomes almost sort of a mental block thing, like, oh, it's going to happen again, right? The Chicago Cubs had this for damn near 100 years, right? As soon as something started going bad, it was like, oh, here we go again, we're the Cubs, right? And if you start to have that mentality, then it is a mental thing. But sometimes it takes one thing, right? The tough win over the rival team. When you don't, it's tight. You need to make the plays. You make the plays, and you don't, step on your tongue in front of a national TV audience. And if they do it once, they get a taste for it. That's all some teams need to kind of get off that schneid and be like, nope, that's all we've got to do. And then they understand what it means to play in crunch time. And honestly, it's training for the playoffs because the playoffs are the same way. Yes. In the NFL, you lose, you're out, right? The mistakes can cost you, and the mistakes in those final minutes when the scores are usually tight is the difference between moving on and having a chair at the table or not having a chair at the table. So it's all good training for that. And they're just doing the regular season version of it. And then we see teams that can never get over that hump in the postseason, right? They play really well in the regular season. They roll into the playoffs and they make an ugly mistake in week 1 and they're out. And they do it 2 or 3 years in a row. And then people start to say, look, they're pretenders. They're not hardened up enough to make it mentally through the playoffs. So the Chargers are right there. They're a super young team. You know, Herbert's only been at the controls for 6 games now? Is that right?
But you wouldn't know it with how well he's playing.
You wouldn't know it, and it's not for the most part on him, right? He didn't muff the punt. He threw the ball to Parham, and it was there for the catch. Look, didn't complete the catch. We get it, but football is a team game. Look, we talk a lot about the quarterbacks, talk a lot about the play callers. There's a lot of focus on those positions, but look, your backup tight end has to make the play in the end zone. He has to catch it or you lose the game. It is a team game, 11 guys aside. So, you know, they're close. They're amazingly close, a lot closer than we thought, especially playing a rookie quarterback. But here they are, and if they can polish it up, again, they're probably not going to push for it this year because they got themselves in a hole early, and that's okay. But if they use the back half of this season, just like the Dolphins used the back half of last season to figure it out and dial it in, you can come out of the gate strong next year, and we always see teams do that, turn their records around in a really stark way because they were figuring it out at the end of a quote-unquote losing season, and they parlay that into some winning early next year, get out to a division lead, and then maybe hold on to it.
This year, the Panthers and Chargers played back in September. A little bit of an ugly game. When they play each other again in 4 years, that one's going to be a freaking barn burner because both of those teams, I think, are going to be peaking at about that time. I can't wait. It's going to be awesome. But that being said, I do want to take a moment to thank our sponsor for this week. As usual, Manscaped has stepped up to kind of sponsor the show. They've been a great friend of the program. You guys have kind of really embraced them as well for supporting us, and I thank you guys as well. Manscaped, if you are new to the show for some reason and you haven't heard, they're the best brand in men's grooming today. I personally use their stuff for 2 or 3 years now. They've been a longtime sponsor of me, and then they also wanted to sponsor EJ with this podcast as well, just because they really love my audience. And I've had multiple iterations of their famous lawnmower body trimmer. As a result, I've had 3 versions now. And their newest update, the Lawnmower 3.0, is by far their best one. It's waterproof. It's got a replaceable ceramic blade with their skin-safe technology, so you get no nicks and cuts. It's got a really powerful motor, so it can cut through even the thickest of body hair. I use it weekly myself, and I also use their new nose hair trimmer that they sent us, the Weed Whacker, a lot as well, because weirdly enough, once you kind of turn 26, like the last 4 or 5 years, I've started growing a lot of nose hair. I don't know if that's just a weird male aging thing, but I don't really like it that much, and the Weed Whackers kind of helped me out with that. So again, thank you to Manscaped for sending me that. The Weed Whacker has that same 9,000 RPM motor with a 360-degree rotary dual blade system, and of course, again, that proprietary skin-safe technology to help prevent those nicks and snags and tugs. Or if you're not in need of any new trimmers right now, but you still want to up your grooming game, Manscaped also offers a wide variety of excellent colognes, body washes, and deodorants that all smell fantastic and leave your skin and hair feeling amazing. So if you're interested in either the Lawnmower 3.0 or the Weed Whacker or any of Manscaped's other great grooming products that, again, I've used for a very long time and I've always loved them, head on over to manscaped.com and use promo code BOOTLEG for 20% off your order plus free shipping. Again, that is promo code BOOTLEG at manscaped.com for 20% off your order and free shipping. And with that being said, EJ, let's head on to maybe the most entertaining game I watched all week. And that was Tua versus Kyler, the rematch, Dolphins versus Cardinals. Man, this game had everything, including seemingly the weekly Agba strip sack, which we're just getting literally every week at this point on a zero blitz. It's like quarterbacks, for whatever reason, when they see zero, it's like they don't realize that the offensive line is going to block inside out and Agba's going to be coming free. Like, they got Goff with it, they got Kyler with it. And what was really weird on that Kyler one is Kyler is one of the best quarterbacks statistically against zero in the entire league. Like, he's got 5th most touchdowns, top 3 or 4 in passer rating against 0. He knows how to handle it, but for whatever reason, when the Dolphins were throwing it at him, he just froze. And Ogba came out of nowhere, stripped him. They returned it for yet another fumble return touchdown. Again, their second in 2 weeks. There's something about this Dolphins team that when they're parking all of their DBs at an 8-yard depth and they're saying, look, we're bringing the house, see what you can do to stop it, quarterbacks just freeze and they just get lit up.
It was really odd to see Murray do that for all the reasons that and early in the game too, right? He is a very cool customer. He is extremely mobile. I think that adds to his calm demeanor. He knows he can get out of almost anything with a couple of steps. He's ridiculously quick. I would say the quickest quarterback in the league. And I don't think that's up for much of a debate. And, he's played a lot of big time football. And he's seen this blitz especially plenty, and he usually is able to do what he needs to do, whether that's, spin out and scoot away, which only he can do in that way, or just hit hot, right? He's very good at that. And to see him kind of wander into the backfield wide-eyed and lose at the point of the sack, he probably had lost already 9-10 yards before the strip sack, and he just kind of looked like hopeless. He was like, I don't know. This is terrible. This doesn't usually happen. And, then it becomes a strip sack and scoop and score. Just a strange play to open the game with. And you thought, I wonder if this is at least I did. I thought, I wonder if this is going to be an off day. Well, turns out not so much. He's going to come back and be the Kyler we know for the rest of the game. He comes back. Speaking of great ball fakes, a great ball fake from Kyler Murray and tosses the easy score to Max Williams, who just came back from the injured list. Haven't seen a ton of Max Williams. I was super high on him coming out of college. Has had a bit of a checkered career, but pops up and scores pretty much immediately in his return to the Cardinals, which is good to see. Then there was a Jordan Howard sighting. Scores on a plunge, which is pretty much what he does right now. He's on pace for, 13 touchdowns and 50 total yards for the season or something like that. But, good to see Jordan, making his money on short yardage. And then Murray comes back, speaking of being the Kyler that we all know and love. His deep strike to Christian Kirk, 56-yard TD, thing of beauty, top of the second quarter. Steps back in the pocket, sees what's developing, takes a good 2 or 3 step hop, stepping up, driving into that pocket. Nice clean pocket was provided for him. Look, he's not the tallest guy. Doesn't need it. Just rips it and puts it out in front. I love quarterbacks who can put the ball out in front of their receivers. It seems to be a lost art with this whole back shoulder fade, right? A lot of people throwing back shoulders and leaving people short. No, guys like Justin Herbert and Kyler, on this particular play, out in front of the receivers, let the guys run under it, throw it away from coverage, let them run to it. Christian Kirk did that beautifully, scored. Just a gorgeous, gorgeous deep ball. But Tua, undaunted, hooks up with a guy we highlighted a few weeks ago, Preston Williams, 2 times on a quick drive for the score. Williams gets the TD as well. Teams trade field goals at the end of the half, and it's 24-17 Miami, mostly again due to that early defensive score. And so, you go into halftime and you're like, good game. Defense contributed for Miami, so they're up by a little bit, but, Kyler got his footing back and, looks like it could be a game. Well, turns out it's going to be a game. Van Ginkel, this guy, he's had a play in 3 or 4 weeks specifically that I can remember, 2 big ones in the last 2 weeks, forces a fumble on the kick returner and the Dolphins recover. Super short field. Now, they don't turn that into a touchdown, but great play by Van Ginkel right off the gun in the second half to say, nope, we're going to keep the pressure on. And then Kyler's ridiculous scramble in the third quarter, which he does I feel like we say that every week.
He's so fast, man.
Yeah, he's fast and he's quick. And just a primer for our listeners, those aren't the same thing. Fast is overall top speed. Can you leg it out when you get to top speed? Are you covering distance? That's what we talk about when we talk about fast. Quick is how quickly you can get up to that top speed, and can you do it with any kind of change of direction, that agility. And Kyler is all of those things. He's pretty damn fast, especially for a guy with short legs. He is liquid quick. He is the quickest quarterback in the league by far, and he makes defenders look silly because of it. They just know. They are, make no mistake about it, they are afraid of him, and with good reason, because he makes them look silly on a regular basis, and they know it. They know they're going to get posterized on national TV because he's extremely hard to keep up with. Great change of direction skills, extremely quick, just scoots. I've heard it described as scoots, and I think that's a really good description. Makes it look easy. So he gets this big scramble to keep the drive going in the third quarter, and then goes keeper and just scoots in for the score, right? From like 13, 15 yards out. It wasn't super close. It wasn't a dive by any stretch, but just made it look easy. There are so many where he gets in and you go, God, why wasn't he touched? And then you realize, because nobody can touch him. Yeah. He made that happen. So, Kyler pushes it back. Tua comes right back, shows what we all knew he had coming out of Alabama. Little running of his own, has a couple nice runs. Now, does he run at Kyler's level or the same way? No, but he had a couple of very nifty runs to keep the drive going for the Dolphins.
That's the exact word I was going to use, which is
nifty. Yeah, the little move he made on the first one where he was sort of leaning to the outside.
And the kind of like shoulder shrug.
Yep,
and
just twist back to the inside and picks up an extra 4. That was really nice.
Yeah.
So Tua's got a little bit of that mobility game going as well, and then hits Hollins for the mini fade for the score. Not really a back shoulder, not really a fade, kind of an in-between ball. Hollins just reaches over the top and grabs it. They come back. They add a field goal on top of that. We've got a game, and we need to talk about this because this is weird. So Bobby McCain's hit on Christian Kirk was worthy. It's not a bootleg shot of the week nominee, but if you want to go back and see a good hit, look at Bobby McCain's hit on Christian Kirk. But we need to talk about the kicking game here. Gonzalez ends up short on a 49-yarder. I'm going to repeat this. An NFL kicker ends up short on a sub 50-yard field goal. Now, if you or I did that, that would be completely normal. 50-yard field goal is a hell of a long kick for us. For an NFL kicker, that's not a kick you end up short on. And he ends up short by a good, yard, maybe yard and a half. It was straight on and just didn't have the gas. And has anybody got an explanation for this? Because NFL kickers don't come up short on 49-yarders. They might come up short on 59 or even 65-yarders, but 49-yarders? I don't remember ever seeing that.
He's hit on a 56-yarder earlier this year.
Oh, he absolutely has the leg. And the stroke looked really clean to me. It didn't look like he stubbed his toe. It didn't look like there was a bobble on the snap. All the things that can cause lack of distance on a kick. It was a pretty good... It looked like a good process, good clean kick, and it just falls
died on him.
It wasn't close. It didn't hit the crossbar. It fell flat in the end zone.
If you're gonna miss it, at least put some leg behind it. Damn, I don't know.
Yeah, and I just don't get that because 49's still a good kick, right? 40 to 49. Yeah. Look, you're kicking it. You're not just. It's not a chip shot. You're not trying to angle it. You're still kicking it. So it's not like he decided, I'll just take a little bit off because I'm at 49. No, you're still belting a 40-plus yard kick. And whatever reason, I haven't heard any explanation. Nobody's really said anything about it. Just an odd way, but a great game. 2 young quarterbacks slugging it out. Going to be a ton of fun when they get to match up throughout the years. And, nothing but sort of positive vibes for both teams.
With that being said, why don't we move on to 4th and long and kind of run through the rest of these games, which we'll still talk about, but maybe not, 20 minutes a game like the other ones do. 4th and long is called 4th and long for a reason because
we're us.
We're us. We're already an hour into this thing. So
because us. Giants and Washington, actually an interesting football game. Lots of love for Kyle Allen. I'm a guy that's had ankle surgery, and he's going to have some ankle surgery, and that was gross. I saw it on accident. I tend to look away when I know something terrible is going to happen to a player health-wise. I was talking to somebody while I was watching this replay, and I was sort of keeping my eyes on the screen, and then I realized I really shouldn't be, and it was too late, and I saw the injury. Not a good one. He's not going to be back this year, that's for sure.
It's tough.
So all love to Kyle Allen. In there doing what he's trying to do, just a freak thing. Nobody tried to hurt him. Nobody went low. It was just, big guys.
I saw a lot of people giving Jabril Peppers crap saying that he intentionally leg whipped him.
There's no way.
I didn't think that was intentional.
If you look at Jabril Peppers after the play, if you look at him backing away and the camera zoomed right in on him, he looked like he was going to throw up. He seriously,
I don't think he
looked like
he'd
seen a ghost. He was aghast. He was like, oh man, that was not something he was trying to do.
And knowing him as a person, like that's just not him. Like as a person.
It's a bang bang play. It's not. It didn't look at all purposeful. I've seen 25 dirtier hits this year that didn't result in terrible injury, but were way, way worse. So yeah, not a thing. No, there was a Football Follies version. Do you remember Football Follies? Are you old enough for that? NFL Football Follies?
I saw the play that you're going to talk about, and I think it took all of 4 minutes for somebody to put yakety sax over it and post it onto Twitter. It was ridiculous.
There you go. That's the thing. When you see a couple of teams boot the ball that many times before somebody comes up with it. So Gibson started it. He had a nice end around. He gets tackled somewhat innocuously, not a huge hit, but the ball squirts loose, goes down the sideline. Looks like it's either going out or somebody's going to grab it right away. 4 tries later and about 25 yards down the field, still not possessed. So that was fun. And then there was the flea flicker of death. I wanted to bring that one up. This was Alfred Morris, recently signed Alfred Morris, getting the ball. If you're not familiar with the flea flicker, it's a handoff. Running back stops right before he hits the line, turns around, pitches it back to the quarterback. Only problem was Morris should have seen that there were 3 Washington defensive line defenders behind him when he went to pitch. Literally, as he turned around, he should have seen the 3 Washington jerseys and gone, wow, if I pitch this back, my quarterback's going to get killed, and just eaten it. Turned around and tried to get whatever he could. Would have been better than what happened. No, he pitched the ball, and sure enough, his quarterback got scissored. I called that the flea flicker of death. Yeah. What else did you want to pick out of this game? The McLaurin catch for TD was amazing. Terry McLaurin, recently named captain of Washington, and rightfully so. Great throw, great catch. This is when Alex Smith had gotten into the game. Yeah.
The one point I would bring up, and it's actually our bootleg shot of the week, that Cameron Curl sack. Here's the thing with Daniel Jones, and he was not the only person to make this mistake. Again, we mentioned Kyler made it earlier, where he's not checking to see if Ogba's coming off the edge hot. He just kind of ran backwards and took the sack. Russell did it when we
I was going to say a certain Pacific Northwest quarterback did the same thing this week.
Some great quarterbacks made this exact same mistake, but I am going to harp on Daniel Jones doing it as well, because he does it all the freaking time, and it's not something that happens rarely with him like it does for Russell, or it does for Kyler, or it does for Tom. It happens all the freaking time. When you are sliding your protection, either left or to the right, quarterback 101 is when the ball is snapped, you then glance the opposite direction of the slide, because you need to see if somebody is coming free off the edge away from the slide. And if somebody's coming free, guess what? That's your responsibility as a quarterback. You're supposed to read that hot. And on that Cameron Curl sack, where he got detonated without even seeing him coming, which is why we nominated it for shot of the week, because he just took it all right in the low back and just got crushed. But it was his fault that he got crushed. It was not a blown pass protection like I saw somebody saying. Like, Evan Ingram literally read the rusher was coming hot, and then he ran hot to the flat like he's supposed to. Nobody around him for like 8 or 10 yards. Would have been a first down on 3rd and 6 easily. All Daniel Jones had to do was just look at him. That's all he had to do. Just look at him. Just play quarterback. Check hot. It's so frustrating watching him. He never even looked.
He never even looked. He took that shot as hard as he did. It was such a big shot because he never even looked. He got the snap, and he basically looked forward and to the right. He never even glanced, and Cam Curl just hits him dead square in the middle of the back. And it's because he never even glanced over there. If he had, he would have at least shrugged, even if he didn't have an idea of hitting hot or stepping up or anything else. He just didn't do anything. He took the snap and went, I'm going to throw the, no, I'm not.
It's third down. Like, come on. I'm so over it. I'm so over Daniel Jones. Like, I just,
all right.
Well,
anyway. We can move on from Daniel Jones. We got some Daniel Jones agreeers, and we got some Daniel Jones disagreeers in the comments. And the disagreeers say typical things like surround him with more talent. You know, if you'd pulled the plug on Peyton after his terrible rookie year, these things would happen. You know, those are the typical kind of comments for quarterbacks who've played for now a couple of years and have not shown the ability to progress past some of the basics. And this one's a basic, and it happens all the time for Daniel Jones. So we'll move on to other things that are basic in the bad way. Lions, Vikings. Lions D right now, Matt Patricia, defensive specialist, hired as a defensive coach, now has all his players in the building after a good solid tenure there. There's no excuse for what he inherited or scheme or anything else. Like, everybody's up to speed, and the Lions defense is rough to watch. Like, that's my note. They're just rough to watch. Like, Dalvin Cook is a great running back. He ran against a lot of air in this game. Like, he ran against some holes you could drive tractor trailers through. You know, he had no contact until well after the second level on several runs. Like, the Lions D is not schematically sound, and it's not being coached because they have some good players. Like, they have some talented guys. Like, Jeffrey Okudah is a talented corner. Like, they have some talented defensive linemen. They could use some linebacking talent for sure, but, like, you know, they've got some talented guys, but they are not playing as a unit, and maybe you can't tell. We're not in the building. We don't know what's being called necessarily, but the execution is not great, and the end result on the field is, it's not. If you like defensive football, now, again, as a Bears fan, this is where I get to not gloat, but say, hey, I get to watch pretty good defensive execution every week. I get to see really good defensive results. I get to see, you know, my team hold powerful and effective teams on offense to a low point total. That is something I get to see. And like I said, I drool when I turn on the Raiders offensive tape. I kind of cringe when I turn on the Lions defensive tape because I'm like, oh, guys, that's not going to work. It's not going to work. Oh, it didn't work. Over and over again. So it's not friendly right now.
This Lions defense, again, for all the talent they picked up from the Patriots and the draft picks they've invested, this defense is still 30th in terms of second level yards allowed, like per carry. Just on the second level alone, they are allowing 1.5 yards extra per carry. That means 5 yards past the line of scrimmage. So what that tells me is that the linebackers are not getting to their spots on time, and even when they do, they're missing tackles. And if you're missing a tackle against a guy like Dalvin Cook, which on that 70-yarder where he just dusted a dude in the backfield and took off, like, it's brutal watching this team.
And it goes on and on, right? It goes on all game. It's not like, oh, they have one big defensive break, you know, every week and it costs them. No, it's pretty much defensive break after defensive break after defensive break. And it's, you know, I feel for the Lions fans, right? Lions fans can be certainly a bit chippy in your mentions. That's something they're really good at, which is strange given their team's lack of success. But I feel bad for them. I really do, because this is very, very difficult to watch. It's for me like watching Bears offense, and that's a totally fair shot to take. Like, the Bears are toothless on offense. Put out, I think Arthur Fishbane put out the stats today where the Bears rank, you know, mid-season, and there was not a number over 28. It was 28th, 29th, 31st, 28th, 20, you know, and that's for the offensive side. And they're just terrible. And the defense for the Lions feels very much the same way. And look, the Lions have a fairly proud defensive tradition, and it is not being lived up to. So I just don't see how they carry on with Patricia after this year, because it just seems at this point, kind of hopeless. I'm not looking for a big turnaround there. Some positives out of this game. Cousins looked good. Their play action game, the first play action TD to Irv Smith was very good. Again, a great ball fake by Cousins. And I gotta say, the Vikings play action game on the goal line is really strong. Some teams struggle when they get to that spot. The Vikings actually seem to play a little bit better down in the red zone when things are compacted. They had some really nice plays. They had guys open. Again, running against the Lions defense, which is not the biggest test. But other thing I wanted to point out was I got halfway through this game and I hadn't checked all the rosters, and I said, I bet Kenny Galladay's out. And why did I say that? Because the Lions looked completely toothless, and we have said this over and over again on this podcast, that Galladay is the guy that changes that offense and makes it capable. He is that alpha that gives them big strike capability, and when they do not have him on the field, they are a different O. Sure enough, Galladay was out with a hip injury, and the Lions offense was predictably meh. Stafford starts pressing. He threw a couple of bad picks in this game. He actually got replaced by Chase Daniel late in the game. Now, this is a former Bears backup. Came out of Missouri more than a few years ago. Looked sharp initially, and then threw a terrible pick, which I'm all too familiar with.
Yeah, that sounds like Chase.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. So not a lot to take away from this one for Lions fans. Vikings look pretty strong. Lions did block a punt if you're looking for the silver linings. So I guess special teams, okay. And then they blocked another punt. How often does a team block 2 punts in one game? So either the Vikings special teams, in terms of their punt protection, has a major problem and the Lions figured it out, or the Lions got 2 really good individual efforts, which is often what punt blocks come down to. So take what you want away from that. On to another game that I think we're both looking forward to a whole lot more, Ravens Colts.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out Jonathan Taylor. That's kind of my big thing with the Colts, and I don't know if it's Taylor. Like, he had the early TD and then, the big fumble they got coughed up for a return TD, but just for the entire season, I feel like he's been very streaky. I feel like Nyheim Hines has been kind of like their most consistent back in terms of like run game and pass game. Again, I still have high hopes for him to be like a dominant back eventually, but I don't know. I haven't quite seen it with him. Like, and it's not even like a physical thing. Like, we see the potential, we see the cutting ability, we see the speed, but in terms of like allowing blocks to develop, in terms of ball security, in terms of like the tackle breaking isn't quite what it was at Wisconsin either, which I know it's easier said than done to like still be a tackle breaking machine in the pros compared to, having guys that were in high school 2 years ago trying to tackle you in the Big Ten. Like, I get it. I look at other young backs that we've seen come into the league, top 2 round picks, and immediately be among the best at their position. And Jonathan Taylor, weirdly enough, for how talented he is, I haven't quite seen him be consistently that guy yet. So again, I'm holding out hope because he is exceptionally talented, but I don't know. Am I off here, or is Taylor just
a little bit of a slow start, and it's concerning because of the position he plays. Like, there are plenty of positions where slow starts are kind of to be expected. Nickel corner. Lots of responsibilities. All the guys are bigger and faster. It's a 2-way go on every play. Kind of expect nickel corners to take a little bit to season. Middle linebacker coming in, calling the defense, understanding what everybody's role around you is. Probably a different defense than you played in college. Middle linebackers can get off to a little bit of a slow start. Wide receivers, depending on, sight adjustments in an offense, can be a whole different thing than asking, a college receiver to run 3 routes. So sometimes wide receivers, certainly tight ends, we do not see historically get off to fast starts when they transition from the college to the pros. Running backs, on the other hand, are one of the positions where we see guys light up very quickly because the roles and responsibilities are the same. And as long as they can handle pass protection, that's the big shift usually from college is, more reliance on them for pass protection. And, if you get Russell Wilson killed, you're not going to get very much playing time. But Taylor, all the physical talent in the world, but a little bit of a slow start. We've seen fits and starts. He does have a good offensive line. That's the other thing. If he was running, say, I don't know, behind the Bears offensive line or the Bengals offensive line, we might be saying, well, look, give this guy some holes and he'll make some noise. He has a pretty good offensive line in front of him, some real talent up there. So I don't think you're that far off. But like you, certainly not willing to throw in the towel. Very, very talented guy, and maybe the game just needs to slow down for him a little bit in Frank Reich's offense. We'll see.
The one thing, I guess the one solace that I have is that he still is leading them yards per carry, but there are no Colts running backs that are above 3.9. Like 3.9 is Jonathan Taylor, and that's the best on the team, which to me almost kind of signals like maybe the offensive line is kind of an issue here.
Yeah, and scheme and play calling, being, again, a Bears fan, has a lot to do with that. When you call the runs, right, and which runs you call in those situations can make a huge difference. If you've got a talented play caller pulling the right lever at the right time, it can be easy yards for your offense. And the converse is true, right? You call the expected run at the predictable time, and your offense is going to struggle to get anybody even out of the backfield without getting hit. So
I think I got to look at the tape on this one.
Yeah,
I just gotta see what's going wrong.
Like
here.
The why.
If it's line, if it's maybe teams are just selling out to stop the run because they don't think Phillip Rivers can beat them, which would be a fair guess. Yeah. Maybe it's the running backs not seeing holes. It's just looking at the talent they have on paper, like. Having 0 running backs, even at 4 yards per carry, is just that's crazy to me. I don't know. Yeah. That's not something I would have expected to see. So
no,
I got to do some work on that and see.
Especially not with the offensive line. So 2 things. You talked about Phillip Rivers. He is really shot putting it at this point. We're getting to the point in the season that arm's getting tired, and he is sort of having to turn his whole body over the top. The arm motion's really short. He looks like he's shot putting it. He's still getting it there, but he's really working to do it, and that's going to take a big toll on him down the stretch. And the other thing I recognized just now that's a whole lot more random looking at the Colts roster is that they have a linebacker named E.J. Speed. And that is the coolest freaking thing ever. He's from Tarleton State. And you got to think, he's 6'3", 224, and on the back of his jersey it says Speed.
That's so sick. What a name.
Just great.
We got to get him and Whitney Merciless on the same team. Have the
Merciless
all-name team.
The all-name team, indeed. Anything else you wanted to hit from Ravens Colts? The Colts defense looked really fired up to me. I was going to say, I wrote this note. Rivers is really lucky he didn't have an extra pick early in the third quarter. Overturned. He did. They counted it. But again, speaking of the back that might not be getting or definitely isn't getting all the headlines, even though he maybe should be for the Ravens, Gus Edwards had another strong game as they're sort of bruising back, punched it in for another TD. Jackson looked really good on a speed bootleg. We got to call that out because we're the Bootleg Football Podcast. Jackson on the speed bootleg for a touchdown looked really good. And like I said, Rivers is starting to show the fatigue early in the mid-late season here. It's already starting to show. That is not a good sign. Guy plays in a dome. We kind of knew it was going to happen, but hopefully it sort of turns around, maybe gets a little bit of rest for that arm in the next couple of weeks. Who knows? But right now he is working to get that ball downfield.
My one other note for the game is people got to stop panicking about the Ravens offense. They've had literally one game all year. We're in week 9 now. They've had one game all year where they scored less than 24 points. Bears fans would kill.
Yeah, I'm like, don't. Oh, God. Like 24 points? Who does that?
People panic when they don't put up 24 points now. It's like, are you kidding me? Like,
yeah, it's not like they have a terrible defense. I mean, you got like, corners, great linebackers. You got Matt Judon. Like, you can turn over some leads or even thin leads to that defense and feel okay about it. And look, Lamar. We talked about Kyler. Lamar is super fast. He's not as quick as Kyler, but he is super fast. He's probably faster overall. And looked just easy getting those points on the speed bootleg. He can score pretty much when he wants to if he settled down. So yeah, don't freak out about the Ravens. Ravens are going to be okay. They're going to find their stride. But the Colts defense had a good game. They were hitting in this game. They looked excited. They looked a little, bloodthirsty in terms of causing turnovers, and definitely sort of what kept them in this game.
If they had, like, I don't know, a decent quarterback. Where if they're, because Phillip Rivers threw 43 times. He's not the kind of guy you want to throw 43 times at this point. If they got any more production out of the passing game, I mean, their leading receiver at 56 yards. If they got any juice on offense, like, this defense would probably have this team being probably 7-1, 6-2 at this point.
This sounds like
a really
super
good defense.
Familiar at this point, man. You're talking about low rushing totals. You're talking about an offensive line that maybe isn't performing the way you thought it was. You're talking about a quarterback that's playing sort of average and receivers not having a ton of yards and a really fired up defense. I don't know. It reminds me of something.
Well, the Colts did play the Bears a few weeks ago, and neither team scored 20 points, and it was ugly from start to finish. So yeah.
It reminds me of the Spider-Man meme where Spider-Man's pointing at Spider-Man, right? These are two teams that are like, hey, you look like me. And that's where the sort of Colts and Bears are. I think Colts are in a better spot overall, but not that far off. Yeah, not that far off.
Speaking of being in terrible spots in the AFC South, Texans Jags. Oh man, I didn't.
Do you want to talk about the positives? I mean, we can talk about positives. They don't happen to be Texans positives.
Deshaun's great.
Yeah.
Will Fuller's great.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Yeah.
That's about it. JJ does JJ things.
Occasionally.
And,
yeah, Luton. We need to talk about Luton because Luton was the big switch this week for the Jags, right? So, Minshew Mania out. Jake Luton in, big, and I mean big, tall, rookie from Oregon State. Big splash play early. Goes vertical to Chark for 70+ to open the scoring. And for those of you that didn't watch Jake Luton as a Beaver at Oregon State, you're forgiven. But his best highlights were driving the ball down the field at OSU. That is what he looked really good doing. Standing tall in the pocket. He's got a big arm. Not super mobile, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then Brandon Cooks, you have been a loud sort of detractor of Brandon Cooks at various times. Goes 57 down the sideline, looks pretty spry doing it to answer.
Screen actually worked for once.
I was going to say, any Brandon Cooks thoughts? Yeah. If we're pivoting back to the Jags, bootleg shot of the week nominee coming up here. I would say if I had to call a winner in a landslide, this would be it. Miles Jack levels David Johnson, and I mean levels. Puts him on his back. David Johnson lays there for a minute, and you're like, is he dead? Oh, no, he moved. Thought so. He moved. Okay,
I
cool.
definitely thought he was.
Yeah, no. Miles Jack had a big game, forces a fumble later on from Duke Johnson. He had some big games early in the season as well where he was just everywhere. I think we brought him up in like week 2 or maybe week 3 in the point after. Miles Jack's been a little bit quiet, still been playing well, but that shot on David Johnson, go look it up. Holy cow, did he absolutely tattoo him.
Yeah, I think he got shoulder to like high chest. I couldn't tell if he got him in the chin or not because the TV angle didn't really show it that well. But either way, like he didn't launch or anything like that, but he definitely hit Johnson high because Johnson was kind of like suspended in the air and all that kind of stuff. It's one of those things where like when you leave your feet and then you take a hit at full speed, like it's gonna hurt.
Yep, you're gonna pivot
no matter what.
And you're gonna pivot.
Yeah, it was a great hit to break up that pass on 3rd and 3, if I recall correctly. So it got Houston off the field. Definitely rocked Johnson's cage a little bit. And, man, great hit. Cunningham also, we had a second bootleg shot of the week from this game. The Zach Cunningham sack on a blitz later in the game where he just swallowed Luton whole. Kind of looked like it was very similar to Bobby Wagner's sack the other week where he just kind of extended both arms and just literally swallowed this dude whole on the blitz. Huge hit in a key spot. Texans pass rush, I think, made some key plays that were the difference in that game other than, Deshaun throwing it to Will over and over and over again. But yeah, huge hit. So I'm going to nominate Cunningham as well for Bootleg Shot of the Week.
Yep, we get one from each side. Nice balanced coverage. And we have to bring up C.J. Henderson. He's had some good games this year for sure. This was not one of them. Duke Johnson scores after a C.J. Henderson penalty that certainly gave the Texans a bunch of yards. And then Fuller smoked Henderson in the back shoulder for a long score later in the game. Looked to me a little bit like Henderson gave up on the goal line. I think he's probably going to take a little shit in the film room for that. Looked like he could have at least tried to tackle him, maybe swatted the ball away. He kind of pulled up at about 5 yards and said, "Bag it, I'm not going to get anything." Watson, still a magician. This is a weekly thing, kind of like Kyler scoring on a keeper. He had at least 2 completely improbable escapes in this game. That seems to be about his sort of average over under. I'd put about 2.5 for the bet weekly for Watson escaping the backfield plays that no other quarterback could get out of, Kyler included. Watson just has a sort of sixth sense for which way to dodge or which foot to lift to get over the swiping defender's hand. He's preternatural at getting out of the backfield unscathed and making things happen. He does it every week. It's not an accident.
He's Houdini, man. And there's a lot of quarterbacks. I think you could say like the top 5 hardest to sack quarterbacks are all up there for different reasons. Kyler's hard to sack because he's quick. Lamar's hard to sack because he's fast. Allen's hard to sack because he's strong. Watson's hard to sack because he's just slippery.
Super hard to sack, yeah.
He's like Gumby.
When he gets
he's
hit.
Almost similar to like Alvin Kamara.
Yes. It never seems to take a really racking shot because he just is able to twist and make himself skinny. And again, just do the right thing with the right body part at the right time over and over and over again to the point where it's not an accident. It's just a skill. And whenever Watson takes a big one, I'm always a little surprised. I'm like, wait, that they actually got him. Like they hit him pretty hard. Like, how did that happen? So didn't happen that much in this game. And then at the end, we talked a little bit about Luton's mobility, and we got to talk about his great rushing TD at the end. He showed he's got a little bit more athletic ability than I thought he had. Moving the ball, ends up sort of turning himself into a runner, not a designed run play, puts his head down and really looks determined to score, makes a move, and ends up getting into the end zone. They're talking about a guy that's like 6'6". He's like 6'4", 6'6". He's a big, tall drink of water.
If you give up a spin move to a guy who's 6'6", who turns and doesn't really move, he's just turning while moving straight. Yeah, you got to turn in your jockstrap after that one. That was just gross. I can't remember which corner it was. But he just kind of reached out with both arms.
Was the surprised look on Luton's face when he did it. He was like, guys,
that worked.
I've never done that before. It was amazing. But great game. He did throw an interception to Hargrave, who returned it almost for a pick six. Look, that's a rookie mistake. I think he showed some things. A lot of people were excited. I was excited as a backup. Again, as a late rounder or possibly a UDFA. He was certainly on my list for guys you could grab for some developmental potential. And in his first start, boy, that initial shot to Chark opened some eyes. But he did a lot at OSU. The folks that scouted him, they were probably like, "Yep, looks like his tape." So interesting game. I'm sorry it was painful for you, but that's okay.
You can't hurt me anymore. I'm already dead.
You can't kill me. I'm already dead. Yes. I'm aware of that. Moving on to 2 teams that aren't dead, the Broncos and the Falcons. Zacchaeus. We need to talk about Zacchaeus, as if the Falcons didn't have enough receiving talent popping up on a regular basis.
What are they, 5 deep now?
5, 6. I mean, depends. But nasty one-hander across the middle that kind of woke everybody up. And then, it didn't end there. Ended up catching a bomb TD from Ryan. And then another long pass later on in the game. Like, this was not a one-off, highlight play. Like, guy had a good game. Like, a really good game.
Yeah. I mean, you look at Julio, obviously. Ridley, when he comes back from the foot sprain, is awesome. I'm a big Russell Gage guy. Zacchaeus is making play like
Christian Blake. Like they're just coming out of the
Yeah,
woodwork,
they're
man.
just dripping in receivers.
It's
Who's the tight end they got in a trade too?
from Baltimore.
I loved him too as a prospect.
Yeah, you
God,
liked
what's
him
his
more
name?
than I did. I wasn't. I want to say South Carolina. Is that right?
Yeah, he's the baseball player. Hold on, let me look it up. I'm gonna stand by.
Because if you hadn't said it,
Hayden Hurst.
yeah, Hayden Hurst.
Yeah, like they got a lot of receiving talent. And Todd obviously can catch the ball well out of the backfield too. When he's not getting absolutely lit up by Josie Jewell, that is. Another bootleg shot of the week nominee.
Josie Jewell,
my God.
oh man, he came up hard on Gurley. That was a big boy hit for sure. We were reminded of Noah Fant's speed. Caught a little flare on the sideline and then accelerated and ran away from a defensive back. That was like, oh yeah, I forgot. Noah Fant's really fast. Speaking of fast, more fast guys on the Broncos. Hamler on the end around. We got to talk about it. KJ Hamler. They're figuring out ways to just get him the ball because they know if they can get him in space, he's really dangerous. Ends up with a pretty good gain on the end around. Yeah, so guys like Powell and Christian Blake making scores and catches for Atlanta. The backups are really powering that offense, right? Zacchaeus, Powell, Christian Blake. These guys are not the guys you think of when you name Atlanta's offense. You're going to say Ridley and Julio Jones and Matt Ryan and maybe you're going to say Hayden Hurst. But, these, if you look at the stat sheet, they weren't the ones filling it up this week. And then one of my favorites, Simmons, the safety for Denver, finally picks off Ryan for going to the well one too many times. Ryan was getting a little too comfortable whipping it off down the middle, and Justin Simmons was like, "Yeah, you don't get to play that same number 3 times in a row." Picks him off, kind of slows down that pace. But Ryan finally throws one to Julio Jones. The named wide receivers get on the board, which was nice. And we talked about Locke earlier at the top of the program in the AFC West conversation, but threw a couple of flat strikes to Jerry Jeudy in this game, including a TD.
Did you see that?
I did.
I know the one you're talking about. He throws up his hand because he's like, "I'm open." He's selling the go route against, I think it was AJ Terrell, 24, who's a rookie, and so Jeudy, like he outside releases and he's selling like he's going to do the old Randy Moss, throw the hand up, throw him the ball in the end zone. And so Terrell just
turns and runs.
Because he just turns and runs, and then Jeudy stops and sends him 6 yards flying. And Jeudy stops on a dime. You know, his short area quickness is just outrageous. And it was I'm not even kidding, one of the dirtiest moves I've ever seen, just from a mental fuckery standpoint.
Yeah,
like
if I had
good.
way more time than I actually have, I would go back and see if Jeudy didn't pull that one on him in college.
They did play each other, right?
Yeah, I think they played each other at least once, and I would love to go back Zapruder film style and see if I can figure out if either Jeudy or one of the other Atlanta wide receivers hasn't done that to Terrell before, because it looked a little too practiced. Maybe it's just something he cooked up. Look, Jerry Jeudy, extremely talented guy, but it was dirty.
It's a curl. But that's one of those things where, like, a curl isn't just a curl.
No, curl with veteran savvy. Let's call it that.
Yes.
So Gurley smashes one in. Locke again keeps the drive alive. Great scramble. Drills one to Patrick for the score. Throws another long dart to Jeudy, and then he runs it in. Speaking of mobility, but they just couldn't quite muster enough to knock off Atlanta. Another one of those teams that seems to be able to find ways to lose every week. They find a way to hold on. Their tenures. The tenor for that team has changed a little bit since Raheem's taken over, and they look to be closing out those tighter games, and you got to do that to win in the NFL. Not every game is going to be a blowout. Chiefs played a close game 2 out of the last 3 weeks, so it's going to happen, and you're going to have to not piss away early leads or fumble away late leads, and Atlanta hangs on for one. So good for them, but some positives for Denver. They've been beat up. They certainly have a rotating cast of characters without Cortland Sutton and a lot of other players. Again, young quarterback who's figuring it out, and they're still competitive. So good game for them. Bills, Seahawks and Bills. This I thought was going to be a very competitive game. It didn't really turn out to be that way. The Bills got the better of the Seahawks, spoiler alert. Allen looks to be over that sort of early mid-season blip where he looked like he forgot how to do everything he knew that he'd done in the first 4 or 5 weeks so well. He's back to making good decisions. He's back to being calm in the pocket. Opens up the scoring with like a 25-yard flip to McKenzie because that's all a 25-yard pass is for Josh Allen. It's literally a flip. And then rips a laser to Croft for another score, and the Bills are up 14-0, which you certainly didn't expect. Look, the Seahawks defense hasn't been great, but Bills just sort of easily rolling up 14. And then we talked about this at the top. You gave it the little foreshadowing. Russ buys a load of time and then throws a really late, uncharacteristic pick to Hoyer in the end zone. He gets out towards the sideline, jukes the defensive back a couple times to kind of gain space, and then just sort of chucks it to Hoyer in the middle of the side of the back.
Lobs it up there.
And it's one of those shocking things. It's like seeing Kyler or Watson sort of get sacked easily. You're like, wait, that doesn't happen. Like, Russ doesn't throw that ball away, especially not in the end zone. And, he did it. Tom Brady made some really uncharacteristically bad throws that ended up getting picked this week. Couple of just sort of moments for some really good players. But the Bills kind of ran this one out in terms of ran up the score early. Seahawks pushed back a little bit, but look, the bottom line on this is the Bills put up 44. And again, as a Bears fan, I'm like, 44? That's 3 weeks worth of points. Don't waste them. Right? They put up 44 and they won by 10.
Yeah.
Like, if the Bears put up 44,
they'd win by 30
or 25, right? You'd win by 3 touchdowns plus you'd have your backup quarterback in. So
both defenses had a lot of issues in this game. And I know the Bills got 4 turnovers, which is kind of their saving grace, but they gave up a lot of yards and a lot of points in between those turnovers. And without those turnovers, they would have also given up 44. So yeah. I know, Bills Mafia is super happy this week, but they got some work to do on defense because they were throwing it like Lockett had some great catches. Obviously, DK had another monster game. There was a David Moore touchdown that was like 50-yarder.
Oh my God, that was very much like the the Derek Carr throw to Renfro. Like literally Russ running around. And I think the one thing that was interesting about the throw to Moore in the end zone, I literally think that's as far as Russ can throw it.
But it got there.
No, it's not that it was short or anything else. It was still a touchdown. He threw it over the defender. But if you look at that looks like maximum effort from Russell Wilson. Like, I don't think he could throw it a yard farther. Like, that is it. And Russ has a good arm.
It was 50 or 60.
Yeah, Russ has a good arm, but
it was 50 or 60 through the air.
I think we found the limit of it. And it was a touchdown and the same kind of a thing. He just ran around a bit, found a guy he had. Moore went deep enough, and Russ hucked it. Like, he gave everything with that throw. And it ends up being a touchdown. It's not like he came up short, and I'm trying to say that he doesn't have a great arm. I think we might have seen the physical limit of Russell Wilson's arm.
Yeah, again, turnovers notwithstanding, it wasn't turnovers plus dominant defense.
No.
It was porous defense interspersed with turnovers for both teams. It's just Seattle didn't get the turnovers like Buffalo did. And honestly, that was the difference in the game, was just Allen not making the same mistakes that Russ did. So they were able to capitalize and get the 44 points. Whereas Seattle, again, you're throwing a pick in the end zone. When he was pressing, he threw that pick on against cover 2 where Trey White just sunk under the corner route to DK. Which is that's a ball that Russ never gets picked up.
I know those were the 2 throws, both the picks, the pick to Poyer and the pick to Tre'Davious White, where I kind of went, I mean, it's just so uncharacteristic. Again, as a guy that watches plenty of Seahawks football, I was just like, what? Like, who? Was that Russell or was he out for a down? No, it was Russell. And very, very uncharacteristic. You're going to have those games throughout a season or a career, but a really, really off game for Russell. But at the same time, look, they put up 34 points. He threw a couple of nice ones to DK.
Yeah.
He threw the big.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It wasn't that great of a defensive performance because you still gave up 34 points.
Now, if he had a decent defense behind him with 34 points, he wins the game. But not the case this year in Seattle. We did, however, end up with a bootleg shot of the week nominee out of this one, too. A.J. Klein mashing Russ for a sack fumble that he also recovered. Just came right up in his grill, hit him straight up, and sort of rolled over him and pushed the ball off. Big shot by A.J. Klein. Again, typically you don't see Wilson take those sort of straight-in-the-face shots. He's great at doing that spin out the back pivot move. That's a patented Russell Wilson move. He avoids so many hits and shots that way. Didn't avoid this one. Took it right up high in the chest and ended up coughing up the ball. Bills get, like you said, another possession, another chance.
And it was the same mistake that Daniel Jones made.
Yep.
Again, it's a slide in protection. Look the other way. Check hot. Russ didn't look. And it's the same kind of thing. It's the mistakes that he never makes. He was making them. And it led to those 4 turnovers. And this defense is not good enough that if you're giving them 4 turnovers, like they cannot help you out. So those mistakes were the difference in the game. And by the way, I just want to say one thing. My film room episode this week is on the Seattle defense and why it is so terrible. That's why I'm not super going into it heavy in the podcast today, because there's a lot. There's a lot of problems. It's a lot of issues that they have. Just keep an eye out for the film room. It'll be out Thursday or Friday, most likely Friday, knowing me.
Remind me to send you a thing about their pass rush.
Seattle's pass rush?
Uh-huh. You'll love it.
Okay. That sounds scary to me.
It is so scary. But
is it a stat?
I'll find it. Yeah, no, it's a combined total of their pressures / hurries, hits, and sacks by game. And it's like, I humbly submit it's not a pass rush problem. Was, I think, the title of the tweet. I can't remember.
No, it's a coverage problem.
I would credit the author of the tweet if I remembered it. Anyways, I'll send it along. But moving on to Steelers Cowboys, which is the 70s throwback game, right? This is the glory days of the 1970s throwback game, but not so this year. Cowboys, starts off hot with checks notes. Garrett Gilbert at the helm.
Yikes.
And then he takes a sack and they settle for a field goal, but did hit CD for score on a nice throw. You had a little bit more detail on that throw you wanted to go into.
Yeah, so really good game planning here from the Cowboys in terms of knowing that the Steelers really like to play quarters coverage in the red zone. That's like they play 3 deep a lot, but in the red zone specifically, they play a lot of quarters. And so they kind of schemed this one up where they had an out and up flood concept here. And the thing is, if you're playing match quarters, whoever the underneath, quote unquote, underneath receiver is, like the first read inside of 10 yards, it's typically going to go to a linebacker. And if you're running 2 receivers deep out of a 3-by-1, the corner's going to pick up one of them, and the near safety's going to pick up the other one. The linebacker's going to take whoever the underneath receiver is. So CD runs a quick out, at least seemed like a quick out, Spillane, the linebacker, picked them up, and then all CD had to do was just wheel upfield on the out and up. The corner was already taken inside by the inside post, and so then Spillane's trying to keep up with CD Lamb down the sideline on the out and up. There's no chance in hell he's going to be able to do that. Good luck. And then obviously they get the easy touchdown out of it. There is a way for a defense to guard that play in match quarters, but they really got to be on their game in terms of the safety playing a poach technique on the other side to pick up the number 3 so that the other safety can then pick up the number 1 so that the corner can then pick up the new number 1 on that out and up.
Very much like that sounds incredibly Saban-esque describing
it's very complicated,
Yeah.
and you have to have guys that play together a long time, that see that play together before. Spillane's obviously only been in the lineup for a little bit since Bush got hurt, and it's tough to pull off guarding that play in match quarters unless you really know what you're doing. And so, again, great design from the Cowboys. It's a cover 4 beater, and really good job of trying to just get Gilbert the best possible matchups he could to score on a very good defense.
Yeah, Big Ben comes back, manufactures a TD with a pump fake. We've seen this. Stop me if you've seen this one like a billion times. It's almost a patented Roethlisberger move. He does this one to Washington, and it is vintage. The pump fake almost... There was a point at which Chris Berman kind of seemed like he was doing an impression of Chris Berman after a while. Right? And it almost seems like Ben's doing an impression of Ben. Like, it's not as clean or sharp as it was, but it still works, and everybody still gets it and laughs. Yeah, Washington laughs all the way to the end zone for that. Great pump on a sluggo, slant and go route, and that's that. That's the ball game. Easy throw. CD comes up with a big fumble right to Minka, just coughed it up, and it happened to go right into Minka's gut at warp speed. Pollard looked good again this game. We've called him out a couple times on the podcast. Seemed to be almost the lead back in this one. Zeke had his touches as well, but Tony Pollard seemed to be doing most of the ground game pickup. Dallas was moving the ball with Gilbert at quarterback, but all field goals. Very few touchdowns.
It's a tough red zone defense to crack. There's only so many quarters beaters you can turn to.
That's right. We talked about all the talent they have, Hayward and Tuitt and everybody on the defensive line last week, and that definitely got to the Cowboys. They stalled and ended up settling for field goals, and that's never good because it will come back to haunt you. Pittsburgh comes back powered by Juju. We also talked about Juju last week. You looked this up. I knew that he had 3 big catches on the drive. You looked it up. He had all 75 yards on a drive and the score on another pump fake.
Literally every single yard.
That never happens.
No, they were down. Like 19-9 or something like that, or whatever it was. And then at the end of the drive, they pulled within like 4 or 5 points, whatever it was. But so they were down double digits. They were down multiple scores, and Juju had every single catch, every single yard, and the touchdown on that drive. And it was the same kind of stuff we were talking about last week, where it's the screens, it's the crossing routes. He's the number 3 inside in the slot. They get too high in the red zone. He runs a corner post because he's matched up one-on-one on the safety based on their match coverage. And so the safety bites on the corner. Juju wins inside the post and then powers through multiple guys, breaking the tackle, breaking the plane. He's just so reliable. And he's not as good at separating as Deontay Johnson. He's not as physical as Chase Claypool, but I'll be damned, when they needed 75 yards and a score because they were trailing one of the worst teams in the league, he got them there. And I love Juju for that. He's so reliable.
Yeah, he's tremendous. A little bit unheralded this year. That's starting to turn around. Well, certainly if you're listening to this podcast in the last 2 weeks, but those plays don't necessarily go unnoticed. Did get in the end zone as well this week, which he has not been doing. Those balls have been going to Claypool and the other wide receivers. Cowboys blocked a field goal. It's a big week for special teams plays, making a difference in games. And then another special teams play, and this is a shout out to friend of the podcast, Danny Kelly, was a huge Rico Dowdle supporter. Rico Dowdle, running back from South Carolina. Dowdle ends up with a big kick return to set Dallas up towards the end of the game. And just a shout out for Rico Dowdle lover, Danny Kelly. Had to throw that in there because he was a big Rico fan.
He might be the only Rico Dowdle fan I've ever heard of.
He was outspoken in his love for Rico Dowdle, I will say. He reached out to me. He's like, "What do you think of Rico Dowdle?" And I was like, "I don't know. He's all right. Like, I'd pick him up super late or maybe UDFA. Like, you can get running backs. He's like, I don't think so. I think he's better than that. I was like, okay, Danny. So yeah, we all see different stuff, but I always, whenever I see Rico Dowdle get touches, I always ping Danny on text. I'm like, Rico Dowdle sighting. So Minka ends up getting a pick in the end zone that the rush generated, right? That was, again, pure Steelers pass rush, getting to the quarterback, basically a duck coming out. Minka's the beneficiary. Pitt gets the field goal to pull within one. Deontay Johnson, who we talked about a little bit earlier, huge play down the sideline. Ebron seals the drive with a hurtling TD. And then Pittsburgh actually ends up getting the ball back after Dallas has a possession. And this one's going to sting a little bit, especially against the Cowboys defense that has been porous for most of the year. Pittsburgh, when they needed it, couldn't get 1 yard to seal this game and march off to unbeaten status. Now, they end up winning the game, so a lot of people are going to overlook that, but they needed 1 rushing yard, and James Conner actually got tackled for about a 2-yard loss. They couldn't get 1 yard.
4-yard loss.
Yeah, it was not a pretty
Even
play.
Worse.
So the Steelers dodge a bullet. Cowboys end up chucking one into the end zone. As time expires, it gets batted down fairly easily. But the fact that the Cowboys, with their third string quarterback, were pushing the Steelers to, a last second Hail Mary possibility that would have won them the game. Look, you got to win the close ones. You got to win the easy ones. You got to win all of them if you're going to, certainly go unbeaten. But if you're going to make the playoffs, typically in this league, you got to take every win you can get because they are hard to manufacture. Steelers breathing a bit of a sigh of relief. If you look past anybody, it would be fairly easy to look past the Cowboys. And the Cowboys stood up and played them right down to the line with Garrett Gilbert leading the charge.
Yeah, it was overall ugly game, kind of entertaining, but in an ugly kind of way. I do have one last note for this game. If you guys want to see a dead body, go look at Cam Hayward's sack on 4th and 8 late in the fourth quarter. In the drive before the Steelers couldn't get that last yard, Cam Hayward, he demolished Connor Williams. Yeah. I mean, one arm threw him like 4 yards. I was a little bit worried about Hayward going into this game because he seemed a little bit banged up the week before that with a quad injury. I wasn't even sure if he was going to play. He's fine. He's good to go.
Connor Williams, you might want to check on, though. Do a wellness check on Connor Williams. He had a rough week. That was not the only rep. Look, if you're an offensive lineman, you're playing the Steelers defensive line, you're not going to have a great week. If you survive and have an average week and nobody knows your name at the end of it, you had an amazing week. Connor Williams did not have that week. He got abused. Moving on, Saints Bucks. Last game we're going to talk about before we wrap it up with our bootleg shot of the week nominee sort of roundtable. Tampa Bay blown coverage on the first TD to Smith, like blown coverage. Nobody close. Nobody had him. Bunch of people looking around like, I thought he was yours. Nah. Harris making big plays for New Orleans, a speed guy for New Orleans for the Saints. Second straight week, he's been racking up yards. Drew Brees is starting to find his number, getting him the ball, and he's got some jets.
I want to see him get more involved on offense and not just on special teams because that dude, there's very few guys in the league that run or that move like Tyreek.
Yeah,
he's one of them. Like you put him with Andy Reid. Andy would get him the ball. I think, honestly, he could be a better receiver than Mecole, and that's saying something.
Interesting. Well, we've seen a lot more of him over the last 2 weeks, and Sean Payton, not an offensive slouch, especially when Breeze is dealing, and he's back to dealing. Saints cough it up on the 2-yard line while driving. That was tough. Jared Cook, I think, pitched it. He had another one later in the game that was ruled not a turnover, but he had some ball security issues this game. We got to talk about this. Adam Troutman touchdown alert. Guy that we got to interview a couple of times at the Senior Bowl. Big fans. Engineering student out of Dayton. Big guy. Surprisingly big guy in person. Was recruited as a quarterback at Dayton. Moved to tight end for the good of the team. Kept growing. Had a tremendous Senior Bowl, ends up getting drafted by the Saints, had a touchdown in this one and contributed on some other plays as well. had a nice gain down the sideline later in the game. Huge game. And lays a lick at the end of a run on that one. That was my favorite. That was a drive that ended in the Josh Hill TD. But Troutman's going down the sideline. He can either go out of bounds or he's got this defensive back and he's like, And I bring that up because I talked to him about blocking, right? Being a quarterback and tight end, you not only have to catch, but you also have to block. And I said, what's your approach on blocking, right? You've had a tremendous offensive season. Blocking sometimes considered the dirty work. I wanted to see how he approached it. He took a pause and he looked at me and he goes, burying a guy on a good block, imposing your will on another mature human being who's really not interested in it is better than catching a touchdown. And he said it in all seriousness. And I was like, I love this guy. This is my guy. Anyways.
So great.
Brady can still rip it. This is right before he tossed the pick to Marcus Williams. When Brady lights it up, he does not look like the other quarterbacks we talked about that are aging, like Phillip Rivers, who was shot putting, like Drew Brees.
The arm is there.
When he unloads, he can still throw it on a line. The guy's, 40 years old?
42,
43,
whatever
I think.
That is now.
Yeah. When he lets it go, he's still got it, and that is surprising. But he tosses a pick to Williams a little bit later, and it was just kind of par for the course. This was not going to be their day. We talked about it earlier in the podcast, some uncharacteristic things done by good quarterbacks. Brady was in that group this week. They finally catch a break. The Bucs finally catch a break. Breeze fumbles it. They drive down. But Gronk drops it in the end zone. Speaking of all this Fountain of Youth stuff from a couple of weeks ago, all of a sudden it looked like the potion wore off. Gronk had it and just didn't get there. So Levante David lays a big shot on a Kamara screen. This is one of our last bootleg shot of the week nominees. Yeah, this is a play that you pointed out. The Saints run fairly often. Saw a bunch of other teams run it as well. The orbit motion where they go back to the opposite side for a screen. Yeah, Levante David was having none of that. As soon as Kamara leaked out to the side, he was on a line, and he got there right after the ball and laid him out.
Yeah, it was like a 4 or 6 yard loss, something like that.
Yeah.
And it's the thing, as soon as he saw the orbit motion, and then they kind of run like an inside zone with a sift block off the orbit motion because they basically try to pull the linebackers towards the orbit while the defensive line is then trying to win to the other side, the front side of the inside zone. And it's almost a way of just making that sift block on the back side of it connect with a little bit better of an angle. And then every once in a while, if you can get the linebackers to then fall back into that gap and play it aggressively, then they'll be out of position to then play the screen to the front side. And so Levante didn't take the bait. He didn't fall back into that lane because he's like, nah, I know what's coming. And as soon as Kamara just kind of started to turn and leak a little bit, Levante triggered, beat every single block. It was like 3 guys that were going to be out in front of the play. And Levante just, he got there so quickly, the blocks didn't even get set up yet, and met Kamara at the ball. Just tagged him. I mean, great hit, form tackle, dragged it down for a loss. Again, the Bucs got waxed in this game, but there were still a few individual plays that kind of remind you, like, hey, there's a lot of talent on this team.
Yeah, good players making big plays, right? And you do see it. I'm always impressed. It's one of the things I tweeted out something this week about being a degenerate and tuning in for, Dowell Loggins running a Joe Flacco offense. That game actually turned out pretty good. We're not going to go into it, but there's always something to learn, even late in a loss. Who's still playing? Who's still running hard? Who's, diagnosing plays that you can tell they watch the film and they're trying to put every good rep they can on tape. Those players stand out, especially at the end of the season for losing teams that have kind of who are literally just playing out the string. You can see which guys want it, which guys are still driving, and which guys have kind of mailed it in or just picking up their checks.
Yeah, I respect the Bucs for hanging in there and still playing hard to the end, even though they were just completely outmatched. The Saints defense played out of their minds. The Bucs offense was mostly out of sync. And this statistically was probably one of the worst 3 games Tom Brady has ever played. The worst I can remember since probably that 2014 disaster in Kansas City, where it was like 40-15 or something like that, and everybody was convinced the Patriots were terrible and the dynasty was over, and then they went.
The annual Tom Brady is done that's gone on for the last 5 years. Yeah.
There's one of these kind of games every single year where Tom Brady loses big. It's not normally this big, but it's happened before. Kansas City's done it to him multiple times by themselves. This year it happens to be the Saints. Like, Tom Brady will lose big once a year. Everybody's going to be convinced that it's over, and then we're looking at him in January in the divisional and the championship and then the Super Bowl, and everybody's like, oh, how could we be so stupid?
Yeah.
Don't take the bait. It's Tom Brady.
He's going to win next week. I don't even know who they're playing.
He's going to win next week.
I don't even know who they're playing, but he very rarely loses 2 weeks in a row. I would probably put folding money on Brady next week because he just doesn't stack losses back to back. And look, he took a beating. He is hyper competitive, and this one's going to burn a little bit. The film is not pretty. He's, I would imagine Bruce Arians will be giving it to in the film room, and rightfully so. He played a bad game. He's going to want to wipe that taste out of his mouth as soon as possible. Look for Tom Brady to have a very solid outing next week.
The next 4 games for Tampa all sound immensely entertaining. So this Sunday, they're on the road at the Panthers.
Ooh.
Then they host the Rams.
Okay.
And then 6 days later, the Rams game is a Monday nighter, by the way. 6 days later, they're hosting the Chiefs, and then they're hosting the Vikings. All 4 of those games sound super interesting to me.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
And then they finish with the Falcons and the Lions.
I was going to say, if you could travel the team for the month, that'd be a great little sort of microcosm of where they're at and whether or not they're really, really good. Again, I'm not thinking that everything's over and everything's going to crumble. They have way too much talent for that. And quite frankly, way too much competitive drive to just fold. I don't think that's going to happen at all in Tampa, but it'd be really interesting sort of follow the Bucs for a month and see how they get through each of those 4 contests. Again, I wouldn't want to be Carolina right now with Tom Brady licking his wounds from a bad beating. Historically, it's not a good place to be.
And with Christian McCaffrey probably not going to play.
Yeah,
he hurt
that's
his
so
shoulder
unfortunate.
this week. Teddy's got his work cut out for him. I'll say that.
Yep. Hopefully Mike Davis comes back big, but he's going to have his work cut out for him against that Tampa Bay defense. They are solid. So let's recap our bootleg shot of the week nominees from this week. Cam Curl's sack. We talked about that at the top. Miles Jack leveling David Johnson. Same game. Zach Cunningham sack on Luton. Josie Jewell's hit on Gurley as he got out on the edge for the Falcons. AJ Klein mashing Russ in that Bills-Hawks game. And then Levante David laying a big shot on the Kamara screen late in the Bucs-Saints game. So those, we will post those. You can vote on them on YouTube. I keep saying we're going to do a Twitter poll, and I keep forgetting, so I will put it up on my Twitter after the pod comes out and let you vote there as well. Give you a couple of sources. You said already that you're working on a film room. We're going to have a Bears Over Beers this week, talking about not necessarily the Titans game because that was gross, but really what the Bears can do now that we're past the trading deadline, if anything, to try and salvage the season, or it's sort of 3 moves that they can make during the season and 3 that they might need to make postseason. So my other co-host, Jeff Burkus, and I are both going to bring our lists and then compare notes, so it should be fun. And there might be a Brett Coleman sighting on Bears Over Beers in a few weeks. We'll see. Got to get that closeted Bears fan out of Brett every once in a while.
Yeah, especially since Texans Bears play in the not too distant future, and I can imagine no worse hell than watching these 2 teams play each other right now.
I'm always reminded of that little meme. What fresh hell is this? It kind of reminds me of 2020. That could be the Texans Bears game. We could have fun with that. Maybe we'll pencil that in. But again, thank you for sticking with us. We know we went over the 2-hour mark. We know you love it. We're not going to say short anymore. Everybody seems to be sold that this is something they want to do. We're trying to get get back to that regular release schedule. We did hear you in the comments on YouTube that's an important thing to you. We're going to work hard to meet it. Can't always guarantee that we're going to hit that deadline, but I think we will this week. What else you got before we get out of here, partner?
Ken Norton, buddy, I'm coming for you this week. I'll just say that.
I think some people should be coming for Ken Norton's job. He really, if there's a case for an in-season firing, like he's right up there.
Yeah, it might be about that time. I'll just say that. But yeah, keep an eye out for the film room. Lots more coming with that. And then we got another episode of the Bootleg Football Podcast recapping Week 10. Same time next week, shooting for a Wednesday release. So again, thank you to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you in 7 days. And until then, later.